One of my favorite parts of this hobby is reading about and, if I'm lucky, borrowing and filming watches that I would never buy or wear myself. One such watch is the IWC Big Pilot watch. A friend of mine, John, was always a fan of this one, and of his few watches that's been fairly secure in his collection with only a slight chance of being traded or sold, this is one. I never got it. Why would you walk around with a dinner plate on your wrist? And why is it so stupidly large in the first place? Pilot watches are typically large, which is partially a legacy from very early ones that were basically converted pocket watches. But they also needed to be legible to function in any situation, whether that was at war or simply navigating in low light. In 1940, IWC produced 1,000 military navigators watches at a wrist-breaking 55mm diameter, and exactly 62 years later, it was reborn and introduced to the collection. I posted a few pictures in various forums of this one, and if those responses were anything to go by, there is a huge fan base for this watch, and no shortage of wannabe owners. Large watches are going slightly out of fashion amongst us collectors and appreciators, but if you go to a real estate open for inspection or car dealerships, you wouldn't think so. This one is different though. It's not a fashion watch and it's not large for the sake of it. Well, it is, but you get what I mean. It's a historically accurate watch and it has permission to be large thanks to that. So what is it like to wear, use and live with on a daily basis? Let's find out. Sizes is obviously extra topical with Schaffhausen's finest pilot instrument, so let's cover this right away. We are looking at 46mm diameter and 56mm lug to lug. Lug width is 22mm and it's 16mm thick. It weighs 144 grams on this leather strap with a steel deploying clasp, and we got a 6-bar water resistance. Jumping into this dial, one of the first things you might notice is that there are no numbers at 12, 3, 6 and 9 on this particular reference, the 500401. In the current slightly refreshed model, the 501001, we do get a number 9. So that's a quick and easy way to see what reference you're looking at. Why is it missing on this slightly older model? Well, perhaps my children's least favorite joke finally came through, and the reason 6 is afraid of 7 is because 7, 8, 9. Thoughts and prayers go out to you, 6 and 9. At the 12 position, we get the classic pilot's triangle that makes it clear which way is up, and underneath that, the timeless IWC logo. When I got serious about this hobby, I laughed at this historical and respectable brand. How could you possibly come up with a more generic name than International Watch Company? But when I learned about the history, I quickly realized the error of my ways and hung my head in shame. Either way, the logo is one of the finest around, and its use of a classic typeface with no unnecessary embellishments speaks to me. At the 6th position is the word automatic, which is actually not a bad thing to make clear here, since the specs of this movement are so impressive that one might suspect it's a manual wind. The introduction to the fancy machine behind the plain dial is at the 3 position with a grading of 1 to 7. Yep, it has a power reserve of 168 hours, or 7 days, but more on that later. It is a big brag complication, and why not, it is an impressive feature. Other than that, big clear hands and large numbers makes this dial just as legible as it would need to be for pilots in low light, or you walking the dog in the morning. We have a very interesting Lume application here too, which I'll cover later, and it's worth hanging around for. My only complaint is that the date complication should be larger at 6. It seems well undersized proportionally, and I feel that they should have gone big here too. Covering all this goodness is a large convex sapphire dial with excellent AR coating on both sides. This one is secured against displacement should you have a sudden drop in air pressure. And as far as I've been able to work out, It means that the crystal is inserted from the back rather than popped in place from above, so a small flange, meaning lip or rim, would make it nearly impossible to have it fall out. I think this is an interesting approach to an issue that hopefully none of us would ever have to experience. A flow-on bonus effect is that if you're ever on a boring date with someone you want to get rid of as quickly as possible, this will be a good feature to talk about for 10 minutes or so. This massive case is all brushed with the usual rounded off edges that we are now used to in luxury watches. But nobody would look at this case. They will stare at this huge screw-in onion crown, which is as eye-catching as it is legitimately beautiful. It actually only sticks out 6mm or so, but the diameter is no joke at 10.5mm. It is the most intricate part of what is visible on this watch, and the closer you get, the prettier it gets. Yes, it is super over the top, but so is everything else here, so why wouldn't you in all seriousness? It's also incredibly easy to operate due to its size and design. If you do have to adjust the hands or wind the movement, the action is incredibly smooth, and these hands seem to glide with minimum torque required. It is possibly the nicest action I've ever felt on a watch. The back of the watch has a plain screw-in case back with some inscriptions, which on the new model includes a nice airplane, but it hides the truly stunning movement in the caliber 5110. I've not been able to find a photo that I could use without permission, but look it up. It is gorgeous, and it's a shame that it's hidden. This movement has an incredible 7-day power reserve, so you could leave it off for a whole week, pick it back up, and it should still be ticking. Holding your ear up to this one, it does sound like a pocket watch to me. It is rather soothing, and all those 250 components plus sure do a good job. The strap is the usual high quality leather, but the deployed clasp is interesting. You simply pull it using a fair amount of force, but closing it you apply some light pressure behind the buckle. The whole contraption suits the watch and it's great. All steel parts are signed, and despite quote-unquote only being a leather strap, it feels luxurious and suits the watch perfectly. Steel or any other material just wouldn't feel right here in my opinion. So the Lume. It is incredible and surprising. I'll let you enjoy it in peace. This is my first exposure to IWC, but hopefully not my last. Trying this big pilot on, I get it. It's quite a statement on your wrist, and you do feel a little like a fighter jet pilot from a bygone era. I can honestly say that if money was not an issue, I would be tempted. It wears surprisingly well and it's not too heavy on the wrist. I appreciate the history behind it, and the engineering of its movement and case is clearly in the luxury genre. So whilst the new big pilot is not cheap at around $15,000, if you have that sort of budget and want a straight up super legible pilot's watch, you would do well to try one on at least. The only miss to me is an undersized date complication, and I'm quite sure that the hundreds of IWC staff are now taking notes about my feedback on that point and will address that in future iterations. One thing large luxury brands are renowned for is taking advice from some loser making YouTube videos in his study. But for those of you that do appreciate my work and might still be listening even now, thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll see you next time.